The Rebel Capitalist Show.
Can you give us the short synopsis on hypergamy?
The way that I look at hypergamy is this. Now, there's two ways to look. When people look up the Wikipedia / dictionary definition of hypergamy, it's usually they go back to a sociological study done in, I believe, in the 50s or the 60s, and it was studying the caste system of marriage and everything in India at that time. Mm-hmm. And they brought up this term called hypergamy, which is that it, in the biblical sense, and the dictionary definition is that women tend to marry up socio-economically. Right. So, and that's all it meant. And that's, everybody just left it alone until 2005. And then suddenly Rollo Tomassi comes along and tries to reinvent the wheel here. So, but from a sort of red pill perspective, hypergamy has two sides to it. It is fundamentally women's mating strategy. And women are looking for two things when it comes to optimizing hypergamy or optimizing that mating strategy. And I'll give you the clean version of it. It's AlphaSeed and BetaNeed. And BetaNeed is the long-term security aspect of that. So when you look at the biological needs of women are the most vulnerable sex. You can argue whether or not they want to call them the weaker sex or the frailer sex or the sensitive sex or whatever, but they are most definitely, by evolutionary standards, the more vulnerable sex because they have the higher investment cost when it comes to reproduction. They get pregnant. They are essentially helpless in our ancestral past, helpless for 9 months, and then they have to raise the child from infancy to at least some form of self-sufficiency. So that might have been like 6 or 7 or 8 years old, depending. And then the process would repeat itself. But the women, by and large, in historical, ancestral, evolutionary perspectives, are the vulnerable sex. Men, on the other hand, are the protector sex. They're the sex that takes the risks. They have the lower investment costs when it comes to reproduction because we have a different mating strategy than women do. So women's primary mating strategy is hypergamy.
And I want to jump in there just real quick, because basically what you're saying, if you think back 200 or 300 years ago, if you're that gal that is vulnerable during the time of pregnancy, if you have 3 or 4 kids and you're doing this all under the age of 20 years old, again, we're going back a few hundred years and then maybe a few thousand years prior to that. If you pick the wrong guy, you got big problems.
It could be a death sentence. It could be a death sentence. Even if you pick the right guy, it could still be a death sentence because it just depends on the circumstances of that time. I think that certainly in the 21st century, but maybe I would say most of the 20th century, I mean, the world's been a dangerous place and still is a dangerous place today, but it was much more dangerous for women prior to, let's just say, the World War II, right?
Right.
And so from that perspective, you have to understand that that's going to cause a lot of different, what I call psychological firmware. So for women, it's going to be a security seeking overall. For most of a woman's life, it's going to be about long-term security. Finding the right guy, finding the guy who has the 3 Ps. And the 3 Ps are this: is protection, parental investment, and provisioning. Those are the 3 parts of the BetaNeed side of hypergamy. Then you have the AlphaSeed side, which is the sexy son side. It's the short-term sexual. It's find the best genetics possible, and at the same time balance that with the best of the provisioning side. So it's the long-term security with the hot guy in the foam cannon party, right? The guy who is like the hot fireman, the guy that she there's a reason why 50 Shades of Grey was the #1 selling book of this century. Okay. It's because women are looking for the hot, sexy fireman, right? They're looking for that. That's why those calendars sell, right? So there's that sexual need. There's that reproductive need, looking for, it's what's known as the sexy sons theory, which is looking for the guy who is the best genetic specimen that she can get with, or that her looks can attract. And women have a very short window, and over a course of a woman's lifetime, they have a very short window of opportunity where they can maximize that alpha seed side of hypergamy, knowing that later on they're going to need, for the most of their life, is going to be long-term security in the BetaNeed side of hypergamy.
So they prioritize those 2 things differently at different stages in their life. And the reason we're focusing on the gals right now is because for guys, it's pretty darn easy. For the girls, we need to understand the complexities here and the nuance, so then we can extract what we need
Mhm.
to layer over the economics. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
So as a result of that, when we put women into positions of power, when they come into political power or social power, the first priority that women, what I call the sisterhood uber alles, has, is they're looking for an optimization between the AlphaSeed side of hypergamy and the BetaNeed side. So when you look at the decisions that women make in the long term economically as well, is that they are looking for a long-term security and insurance of that it's security, because again, there's that psychological firmware that tells women that they are the vulnerable sex. So what do? We come up with policies, legislation, economic, political, social, conventions that ensure that long-term security, because that is the overarching need for women in the long term for the rest of their lives. So while they have that 10-year window and they're living it up and they're doing OnlyFans and they're they're doing their trying to maximize the capitalize, I guess, on that window of opportunity, by and large, from the time they get to be about, say, 30 till 90, whenever they die, or even up to menopause, you're looking for long-term security. And so when you look at the policies that we instill in sort of a gynocentric social order, they're all geared to ensure that beta buck side of hypergamy. And once that's more or less assured, then women want to believe that they have longer to look for Mr. Right. And I think that that's where we're kind of at right now. That's one of the sort of the dirty tricks dirty tricks, but it's certainly the evolution of how that society and that body politic, I guess, caters to the mating strategies of women right now, when we prioritize women as the social authority, the political authority, the legislative authority, whatever you want, even religious authorities at this point right now. And it's all directed towards that security side of things, while kind of, nod and wink to the girls who are still in their prime fertility phases.
As women mature, they're looking for different things, but as their level of education increases, as their income levels increase, what they consider to be a good quality long-term prospect from a guy, that also increases. In other words, their standards increase. So if women are making more and more money and becoming more and more educated, that may be great, and I'm all for that. But the reality is it's going to limit the amount, or reduce the amount of males that they would consider to be quality long-term prospects. Is that correct?
Very much so. You probably have read these articles. I think they came out about 2019, about how women were having trouble, and this is women who are, like, say, after the age of 30, are having trouble finding their educational equals, and they were turning guys down because they were economically unattractive. That was the terminology that was used, I believe, by the New York Times and maybe the Atlantic as well. And what it comes down to is that women are not looking for equals. They're looking for someone who excels them in education, in business acumen, in money, for sure. One of the clearest indicators, or I should say the higher incidence, I guess, of divorce comes when a couple is making the same amount of money, or maybe the man or the husband is making more, and the woman gets a promotion, or she gets in some way, moves up in status in the company that she's in. And the moment she starts making more money, that is a trigger for divorce. The divorce rates increase dramatically when that happens. So it's not just about, we want to be equal partners, or we want to be in an egalitarian marriage or something like that. The problem is there's a biological and evolutionary aspect that goes along with this. Well, a woman needs a man that she can look up to and respect. Right. So when we talk about economic unattractiveness, I've seen the numbers for this as well, by the way, is they said that I believe it was the man, the husband, is expected to make at least as much, and to be economically attractive, he must make 58% more money than that woman is actually making at that time. And I want to say I got that from, like, either Morgan Stanley, or I got that from Forbes at one point. So when it comes to economic attractiveness, that guy has to make at least half again, if not more than half again, what that woman is making. And that's becoming increasingly more difficult for guys right now, because women outstrip men when it comes to college educations. It's like 65 or 70% women compared to like 30% of men that are in colleges right now. Men tend to be more what Jordan Peterson has called they're part of the lost boys generation right now. And what that means is that they're kind of purposeless and, rudderless in life right now, looking for whatever it is that they think that they ought to be doing. And you look at the side of things that women would need in long-term security, and we provide that in spades, or else we provide the perception that women can get to it if they need to get to it in the future. So what does that leave? That only leaves the AlphaSeed side of hypergamy. And that's what women tend to focus on, because they know that whether it's through education, maybe they got their own business, maybe it's, whatever they think that their entitlements are, or whatever that security side is for the most of their life, if that's already taken care of, if you say, I'm taking care of protection, provisioning, and parental investment for you ladies, what's left? It's only the AlphaSeed side. And that's what they tend to focus on, which is exactly where you get the lost boys generation from, because you've got this 80% of guys who think that if they maximize themselves being the attractive side, the attraction side of hypergamy, that they're going to eventually get married. They're eventually going to solve their own reproductive problem, because they're not the top 20% of guys. Mm-hmm. So they're going to play to their strengths. Well, the problem is in an industrialized society, certainly Western societies, women have no use for those guys anymore. They have no use for the lost boys. They have no use for somebody who's not making 58% more money than they are, because why would they? Why wouldn't they be focusing on the hot guy in the foam cannon party? Why would they not look for the guy who is the alpha male all the time? Because they've already got the beta buck side of hypergamy, more or less, at least the perception anyways, is that it's already been accounted for. So they're only going to focus on one side.
In the future, they're going to focus more and more on the alpha side of things at any age
already
group,
doing
not
it.
just after the epiphany phase.